So, as you probably guys have probably already seen from, from the event title, we're here today. We're talking about the real-time revolution. The actual purpose of this talk that I wanted to do is a little bit different from what we normally do on BHXR, where it's normally sort of like a little bit like a devlog of what someone's been up to, or what they're planning to do, or what they do on a day-to-day basis. This does align with some of the research that I do at the university, but a little bit broader. And the reason behind I wanted to do it is because of these buzzwords that are floating around at the moment. So this whole session is kind of a bit of a buzzword breaker to try and lift the veil. And I think all of us sort of in the tech industry and in most industry, we like to put insights into we like to put what's the word, buzzwords and jargon on top of everything, and can always get mixed up a little bit. So let's hit off with real-time skills. Let's just go straight with what the title is. There's a bit of spiel here from Tech Target that I thought was quite nice. You're more than welcome to sit and read, but again, it kind of like bouncing around what's actually happening. The actual last sentence of this kind of stands out for me, and it's that real time describes a human rather than a machine sense of time, which can get complicated because we're always referring to real time when talking about computers. We're actually speaking about the human using the computer, which is rare. But essentially, the premises of real-time technology when dealing with computers is that I do the thing, and the computer also does the thing immediately. That's the premise of it. And it kind of sounds like common sense because that's the age that we're living in. But it actually wasn't too long ago that this became a phenomenon. And the first example of it that I could find within my lifetime was actually instant messaging. Don't know if anyone remembers sending their first instant message. I'd actually never heard of ICQ back in 1997, but this was apparently the first ever instant message application. Not that long ago, as you can see, 1997. What it isn't too far away in people's memories. My first one was actually MSN in 1999. Anyone around my age can probably remember spending all their evenings after school sending messages to the friends that they'd just spent the entire day speaking to. What on earth was wrong with us? But yeah, that was sort of like casting our mind back. That was kind of the first example of real-time messages being sent. It was crazy. Like, I type something, I press send, and the person on the other end gets it almost instantly. This kind of like was the first stepping stone to the age of information and communication. Obviously, emails before could potentially take hours to send in some cases. But we've come a long way since then. In a mere 20-something years, it's not actually that long amount of time. So we're talking a little bit about real-time software here. So the example I've got on screen here is actually the Unreal Engine. But anyone that's attended any of my other talks knows that I'm an absolute massive Unity fanboy. And this entire talk is very, very, very different from my usual spiel about Unity. So yeah, Unreal, in my opinion, is actually leading the charge on Harry with the MSN nudge. Oh no, oh dear, PTSD coming back on that one. Your entire screen ringing out. But yeah, so I do think they're leading the way with some of their real-time technologies that they got. Some that I'm going to go over right now. So one of them being metahumans. I'm sure many people have seen the MetaHuman project floating around, but whether you've used it or seen it or just got a glimpse of it or know about it, it's become quite popular at the moment. And it's the ability to make high fidelity, near human looking models instantly. There's no waiting around for it to load. If I want to change the eye color changes. You can change sort of like the density of the skin tone, the hair, the age of the person. It pretty much works on a slider. I mean, there's some real powerful technology here. And as with most things I'm going to talk about today, it's actually it's an amalgamation of different technologies being used to do this. Another one is real-time lighting. So this is a bit of a favorite of mine. So the ability to, the main one, the popular one at the moment is ray tracing. So if anyone is up to date on graphics cards and tech and stuff like that, they'll know that the big slogan at the moment is RTX on, RTX off. So the new series of RTX cards, the 20 series and the mythical 30 series that is really hard to get hold of because it's that popular. Has been revolutionary in the way things look. So as humans, the way we see things is through light, and it only makes sense that the technology for lighting digitally needed to improve, and it has done so dramatically. Long gone are the days of if anyone used Unreal or Unity several years back, to bake your lighting for a scene would take so much time. Same in like any sort of 3D rendering software. Lighting was always a really, really costly thing on computing power.
Well, you would take days, wouldn't it? You'd leave it on. I remember doing architectural
Yeah,
and you'd leave
yeah,
it for about 2 or 3
exactly
days
days.
and just hope for the best.
Yeah, I remember having students in our computer lab who would take up several computers and would be rendering a different part of their scene on different computers to try and speed things up. So yeah, that kind of is a thing of the past now. Where I mean, to take Unity and Unreal, for example, we've got real-time lighting built into the engine, where you can just click and drag a light around the scene and it just casts shadows, instantly in real time. Who knew? I got another example here. I don't want to just do cars, but yeah, real-time lighting being used to mimic global lighting to give an accurate perception of what a space would look like. Ray tracing is it's a really clever bit of tech where it's quite literally calculating each ray of light and how it would bounce off the particular material and the effect that would have on not only the material but the surrounding area as well. How would that light disperse? How would it cast shadows? How would it cast reflections? All done in these split millisecond calculations for thousands of rays at once. The amount of math going on. I mean, it takes me 20 minutes to figure out how much change I should be getting from the shop. I don't think I'll be able to figure out how this is doing. How high? I've got a question here actually. How highly spec does your computer need to be to deal with real-time rendering? Surprisingly, not very. So we get this question a lot from our students that join in the first year, because we predominantly use Unreal and Unity. And they're always asking, what kind of computer do I need and whatnot. And it's very little. Obviously, the more powerful the computer, the better results you're going to get, and the less time it takes. But I myself was using a computer without a BBC Micro note to it. I haven't tried. There is a version of Unity called I think it's called Unity Micro or Unity Mini or something like that. It's not linked with the BBC Micro, but it's actually the engine's been rebuilt to work with very, very low powered computers and end up being very small file sizes as well. So if I can grab a link for that at some point, I could probably get it sent over. It's kind of constantly being evolved. I've seen a few talks about it, but that's the kind of scale we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with like all the way down from being able to run on, these real-time rendering pieces of software, be able to run on like the smallest bits of hardware possible, all the way up to people using 3090s. And that's the kind of scale we're dealing with. It's quite impressive. Another example is real-time tracking. So this is another big favorite of mine that I'm venturing into at the moment. I mean, if anyone's ever seen sort of motion capture stuff from the late 90s, early 2000s, where you have these massive rigs with suits with big light bulbs on, and it was such an expensive setup that it was reserved for the top film and animation studios in the world. I don't think it was even adopted by the games industry quite early on, just because of how expensive it was. It was quite a big deal to have motion capture in a video game. But now that's kind of, again, just through the use of real-time computing, you can just use your phone now to use motion capture, capture your face and get it straight on a character in your chosen engine. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, there is a reason behind why all this is possible. Would you recommend using Unreal Engine over Unity? It's all about purpose. It's all about what the reason is, and what result you want, to be honest. I went from Unity to Unreal only very, very recently. We're talking like 2 or 3 weeks back, so I'm still sort of finding my feet. I would actually recommend giving both a try. They're both free bits of software, so just give them out and see which one you like more. The overall difference, I would say, is that if you think you're willing to try your hand at programming, a little bit of C#, then Unity might be for you. If you really want to avoid programming at all costs, Unreal offers an option where you can just use blueprints with like a click and drag, almost like a story narrative style of programming, which tends to be a little bit more user friendly. Real-time computer vision and AI. So the ability for a camera to not only be able to detect something like we was talking about in the previous slide, but actually in that split second, it's able to figure out what it's looking at, where it's moving to, how fast it's moving. It can decipher color. It can even figure out, I mean, I know in this image, it's just saying which cars, but it's actually got the ability to say what the type of car is. And on this scale as well, it's not just doing that every single frame that this camera is running. Let's say you got a 60 frames a second camera running. It's not just doing that for one object per frame, per millisecond. It's doing it for all of these things on screen.
And we've all had an input in this, haven't we?
Yeah.
When Google asks us if we're a robot or not, and asks us to identify cars for them, or motorbikes, or humans, they're actually feeding back into a machine that does this, right?
Yep, all played in. It's got an actual saying, but essentially it's crowdsourced machine learning.
Yeah.
We are collectively as a hive mind teaching machines. How to recognize things. It's really, really cool. This group will know very well about augmented reality. If you've played around with augmented reality for the last sort of 10 years, I seem to remember augmented reality. I think my first experience with it was on the Nintendo DS. Was it Nintendo DS? Yeah, I think it was. They had these like weird cards they sent out, and it was real janky. It was real slow. The object couldn't actually do anything. It just popped up in the space. And now we've got stuff that it's able to recognize the actual environment around you, recognize walls, recognize floor, and then place the things appropriately in the space. Then the ability to interact with those things and have those things change every sort of every frame, every millisecond is absolutely amazing. Again, it's you doing the thing, and this bit of software in augmented reality changes with it instantly. And exactly the same with virtual reality. I mean, I know we're going to get onto metaverse stuff in a minute, and essentially that's the precipice of it that we're talking about. It's the ability to actually share a virtual space with somebody, and you do something on your end in one country, and almost instantly that same thing is happening on someone else's device across the world.
Nathan, we've got 2 questions coming in.
Yeah, let's go for it.
First one is, with computer vision and AI, would you recommend Unity over Unreal because of the C# scripting?
So my experience, I've gotten a lot better with Unity for any sort of AI based stuff. They've got a really cool package called, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called like Unity. Oh, it's really going to bother me. I'll try and find it by the end of the talk.
Yeah, we'll get back to Khan on that one then.
Yeah,
I don't want to hold you up.
Yeah, that's right. If you just search something like Unity machine learning, they've got a built-in package to kind of help along with that, and they've got loads of learning resources for it as well. Brilliant. I found that it's a lot more it's a lot friendlier to learn that way. What was the other one?
The other one wasn't really a question. It was an input from Oliver on Khan's question. So you can,
I just took a glance at that actually about the use of Unreal and being used on TV and whatnot for virtual production. So interestingly enough, it's a really good point, and I totally agree with Oliver there. I actually had a meeting a few months back now with Unity, asking them about what their plans for virtual production is. This was before they acquired the VFX company that Peter Jackson owns. If anyone's seen that, that's beside the point. But yeah, I totally agree. Unreal is absolutely amazing for virtual production stuff. It's kind of one of the areas where my research lies, and they're starting to develop an actual pipeline for these things. Yeah, totally agree. Really good point being made there. But the big catalyst for all of this is real-time rendering. I know I already touched on it once already, and I know you had an input as well, Harry, about your experiences with it. But this technology has come on so fast in such a short amount of time. It's absolutely it's insane. I mean, even just this year, well, last year now, I guess, the jump from the RTX 20 series to the 30 series in terms of graphics processing has been, it's almost doubled. And the stuff we're able to do now instantly is just crazy. I mean, ray tracing is just one example of that, but the ability to train AI faster as well. I mean, we're not quite there with it being real time yet, but yeah, it's only a matter of time, I think. Which system would be best for generating information to fill in gaps on a 4:3 screen? Display at 69, can it be done? Filling gaps. Are we talking about artificially filling in the side bits? It's a really interesting concept, actually. I hadn't really, it's not something I've thought about, but I mean, it's got to be possible. I know that. So what you're essentially doing there is obviously a video is, for example, is 60 frames per second. If we take each image of a frame, you would have to basically run that through some kind of AI algorithm to fill in those blanks. I know that that's been done to artificially create an image based on another image. So essentially, you'd be looking at doing that per image. So you'd pull the frames down, separate them into images, and then have the AI algorithm render each image separately and then feed it back into a video. But that first step is essentially looking at how we fill in a single image and sort of go from there. So yeah, I mean, in theory, I'd say it's doable. It's actually a really interesting project. I don't know if that's something you're pursuing at the moment, but I'd definitely be interested in hearing more about that if you do. So how is this real-time computing being used in industry? So this is kind of the real juice of the talk. I've sort of introduced what real-time computing is and some examples of it. A lot of them you probably already would have known. Where are they being used? Where's some examples of this? I mean, our very own Harry has got experience in this one, I believe, it being used in architecture. It's actually one of my favorite examples of it being used. I don't know if you had the chance to do any sort of, well, you probably did, right, Harry? Some 3D rendering stuff, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, a tool like Lumion was the most powerful example of that real-time environment creating. Going from fixed 3D views, what you can see here, where you draft a view, get agreement on it, and just render that view, to be able to move through an environment that you've created digitally, completely seamlessly, with the environment moving, people moving around, trees moving. It just changed the game for us from a real time point of view, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big ticket there, right? Is just the seamlessness and speed of having to,
Yeah, so
it's going to take a long time to make these models, right?
Yeah, you move from people saying, "Oh, that's one view. Can you do us another one?" and then taking a week to be able to just sit down with a client or a team and just move through any space at any point. And that's same with the games industry. Really, just it's a complete game changer. And just changed everything for us, really.
No, definitely. I mean, so I've got an example here of it being used. I don't know if this is that software you was talking about, possibly, but the ability to, again, we need to break it down as to what we're actually looking at, and we're looking at a 60 frames a second video of someone essentially walking around an apartment that doesn't exist. This isn't real. So every single frame, everything on the screen is being calculated in real time, instantaneously. We're talking all of the textures, the actual ability to look around in the 3D space. We're talking all the different lights that we see. So you've got the global light, you've got the ceiling lights, the under counter lights, all giving off shadows, all giving off reflections. This is all being calculated in real time, every single frame, every single, almost milliseconds of thousands of bits of data being transcribed in such a small amount of time is absolutely fascinating. It's so powerful. And sort of when we're relating this to industry and what this is doing, I mean, Harry's already touched on some of the key points, especially when you're dealing with clients, the ability to sort of put them into this space, show them. I mean, you can see here that in real time, they're just going to change some materials and some colors and things like that. It's absolutely instantaneous. No need to stop and re-render the scene. It's crazy.
Or even just from a designer point of view, or if you're an artist in this instance, or a designer, you can, you can stress test the design at great speed, where otherwise you'd have to rely on drawings or your own render, and there'd be an element of risk in it. Suddenly all that risk is diminished massively because you can just go and test it right in the actual environment instantly. So from a designer point of view, it's it gives you a lot more confidence, right?
Could you alter a dimension and re-render in real time? I think I know what you mean, and I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, we did that a few times. Where you'd be in a space and you'd be working through options essentially. You know, can you make that a little bit bigger, or pull that ceiling down, or open that up, or double that in size, for example. Yeah, so you can. Yeah.
Another example is automotive. So the automotive industry has kind of really been pioneering this sort of tech, and I think that they are sort of the forefront of this industry 4.0 that's being labelled. And it's essentially it's the use and combination of all these technologies being used to improve workflows, reduce risk, as Harry said, and both of those things result in an increase in profit and money. To be honest. What we can see here is essentially what we call a digital twin. We actually have one of our students who now works at Jaguar Land Rover do their project on a digital twin of just one of these sort of robot arms that we see. And when we talk about digital twins, what essentially I mean, this one's got sound on actually, so I won't talk over this one just yet. A digital twin is exactly as it sounds. It's a exact digital copy of something in the real world. That their brains are linked. Let's say that. So, for example, if you move the robotic arm in this 3D software, it will move in the real world as well. What that also means is that we can actually train the digital robot arm to do something that the physical one can then do. Now, I don't know about you, but it takes me a very long time to actually learn how to do something. I'm not a fast learner at all. The benefit of a digital twin being able to learn things not in real time, in what we call compute time, is absolutely fantastic. So this robot arm could learn how to paint a car 1 million times at once. That's kind of what you're competing with, I guess, if you want to put it that way. It's absolutely fantastic. And that's just one example of that kind of tech being used. There's a great little talk here about how I think it's Mercedes are using this tech, so I'll just play it and stop waffling. I got audio coming through, Harry.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you can actually turn it up a little bit, Nate, if you like. Yeah, turn it up a little bit.
We can show everyone who's involved different solutions for problems. Then everyone is able to imagine what will happen in the real car. We were able to show the designers what we did, and they had the same quality like before in the meetings. They were able to move into the car and show me which perspectives they meant, if they had something like they didn't like. That was really cool.
We are having a very big structural changes in our plants. We are implementing the new model E4 with 2D tools like on the paper or PDF. We were forgetting, for example, a scanner or a screwdriver. We have the possibility now really to build up exactly everything, how it's going to be. It's giving us the opportunity to be a communication tool. For example, Teams meetings, I can open my project, and together with the process plan and the logistic planner, we can try out new alternatives, and we can optimize the planning status in the early phase. This is saving us time and costs also.
We have less customers in our showrooms. Yeah, that's why it's very important to have another way to show our customers the different cars, different options, different colors. Eve is emotional virtual experience. We use it all time, every day, to show our customers our stock cars with the options, or calculate or configure a new car. And after that, I can show my customers here also in the screen, or I can send the link via mail with the offer to my customers at home. It's easier for my customer to select the right car. Half hour or 1 hour, and we have a finished configuration with the customers. My customer's happy, I'm happy. Yeah.
For me as a software.
So it goes on to more the development side thing now, which I don't think we need to touch on. It talks more about Unreal.
The developer there.
But yeah, I think we actually saw two examples there. We just dial back twice. We actually saw two examples there of real-time computing being used for two completely different things, but within the same industry. So we had on one hand real-time computing being used at a design level, like Harry spoke about before, where designers and I don't know who actually, the manufacturers, that's what I'm looking for. The designers, manufacturers, the client perhaps, can all sit around together and see these changes happening in real time, not having to wait and render out a product to then have it shot down, to then have a design flaw found. Imagine the amount of speed, the amount of time that's being saved by being able to sit in a room, make these changes instantaneously without having to constantly send in backwards and forwards. I mean, if anyone's written a document together, for example, having to send that backwards and forwards throughout a team is pretty painful. Imagine doing that with an entire vehicle. I imagine it used to take absolutely years to get all these things right, and for these sort of design flaws to be found. And that's even if they found them all. When time's a factor, then that's when kind of deadlines become stressful and things get overlooked, I guess. Right, moving on to medical. It's not the most exciting one, but a useful one, probably the most useful one. I've got a video clip coming up. There's no blood, but if you're a little squeamish, you want to look away. They do like a bit of knee surgery in VR. But again, real time stuff in medical. Actually, kind of was on the back burner a little bit because it's one of those professions where things really do need to be instant, and if it's not, someone dies. So that's not great. But it's being used both in education and actually it's starting to be used within the actual operating room itself, which is pretty impressive. The video clip I've got is actually an education video, such is my nature.
That we've built a great demo on this new Oculus Rift S system. This is our new system. I'm eager to show you our demo. So without any further ado, I'm going to go into our virtual space. So now you'll see me in virtual space. You can
so these guys are using it for training, right?
And I have hands.
Or they're
then, Harry.
They're using this for like a training exercise then.
Yeah, exactly. That's the premise. So again, we've got a few different bits of real-time technology being used here. So we've got the VR itself, which is which is real-time sensor, a bunch of sensors sending information instantly, so that can be transcribed into a digital world. But in a second, we actually get to see. So they show you in a moment. So they got it's quite gamified. So they've got a task of step by step telling you what you would need to do to this patient to perform this knee surgery. My favorite bit is coming up. So he moves the knee up into the correct position.
Oh, right.
But my favorite little bit of which is it's fairly new real-time computing that I'm looking forward to playing around with. I say new, that's a bit of in quote marks, but it's real-time mesh deformation. So the ability to actually manipulate a rendered 3D model in real time. Is gonna prod his finger in there in a second, and you'll see that the skin actually is able to move around his finger in real time. That's not pre-programmed.
Wow.
That's not like an animation that's been planned. Yeah. Essentially, what we've got is the physical object that's being sent by the sensors through the VR in real time, then poking into this bit of model, and the actual, if anyone's done the modeling, the actual polys of that model are being manipulated by the finger, and all that's being computed. If anyone's done any modeling and tried rendering a model, you know that even still, if you're using Maya or something, it can take. Yeah, it definitely needed a warning. When I first seen that, I was like, "Oh, that's a little bit too close for comfort." I'm gonna pause the video there before he really starts diving into it. But yeah, he goes real deep on that knee. It's a full knee surgery in VR. But yeah, it's quite interesting.
That's so important, isn't it? With training applications, you can't, it's all good and well having a virtuality experience where you sit and you're a passive observer, which is, historically what it'd be used for. But to be able to interact in such a realistic way, not in a sort of token gesture, but to be able to actually do that
exactly
is just a game changer, isn't it?
And the limitations before were it not being in real time. You know, you're having to. I remember doing training videos before where it was kind of like you'd do a little bit, and then like the screen would almost like fade to black and go to the next section.
That's it.
Because they don't want to do all the computing between those sort of scenes, because it's too expensive. Not money wise, but computing processing power wise. But right now we are seeing an entire knee surgery performed in real time, using VR in real time, using mesh deformation in real time. Like, it's, again, there's just so many calculations happening all at once. It's hugely impressive.
And there's obviously just picking up on Justin's question here, there's obviously the haptic gloves now that are coming out, aren't they? Where
at the moment,
this
very
guy is
impressive.
interacting with that knee, and visually it looks, it's a visual gesture, isn't it? Visual engagement, but to be able to engage the haptic gloves, which is obviously the next wave of tech coming through, to be able to feel what that knee feels like, right, as you pull it open, is the next stage, really. That is
the next component. And again, all we're doing is we're layering these sort of real-time technologies on top of each other. And then again, when I get to some metaverse stuff, we'll talk about that more. But
let's move on from the knee. I'm conscious that Clayton might be. You've got 15 minutes left as well.
Let's go. Let's fly through. I have still got loads to do. Manufacturing it's kind of an obvious one. It's again is a great little clip that I'll just talk over, because essentially what they're doing here is they're simulating an entire bottling company. I don't know what they're bottling. Maybe it's Coca-Cola. Maybe it's something a bit hard. Who knows? But yeah, they can actually in real time change many different parameters of this production line. I've actually got the list on here, so they can change the tank size, they can change the flow rate of the liquid, they can change the pipe system, so they can just alternate where they are. The conveyor system can be changed, the storage system can be changed. They can add additional equipment, they can speed it up, they can slow it down without stopping it. There's no sort of, this isn't like simulations in the past where predefined you'd run the simulation for a week and find out what happens. That's kind of a thing of the past now, because we can just speed it up, slow it down, change what we want all in real time and see the effects of this. And this is being used in most factories now to essentially optimize their production lines, which is pretty impressive again, and saving people lots of money. But the truth of this is it's actually really all old news. There's a lot of the things here that you probably already would have heard of, because you've used them recently, separately. We're layering these things on top of each other. And in fact, I mentioned ray tracing earlier on in the presentation, and ray tracing itself is actually as old as 1968. Apple released a paper where they were essentially using ray tracing to render things. I was actually informed by my colleague yesterday when I showed him these slides that there's actually an earlier example of ray tracing being used for sound, and that was 1960 on the nose. So that's how old the actual not the technology, but the theory behind this. Definitely, I mean, you can see there actually in 1979 it's being used to actually render something. All we've got is the hardware playing catch up, which is often to the contrary of what people think. People tend to think that we're always playing catch up to technology, and new tech comes out and then we develop for it. But we're actually at a stage where the technology is moving so fast because it's playing catch up, which is a bit of an eye opener for me. Another example of real-time computing being used was actually over in Japan for their underground system, which they're really famed for. And in fact, again, when I was showing one of my colleagues this the other day, he said that actually a recent study was done to show just how efficient Japan's railway system was. And what they did, they put out a map of the Japanese underground on a table, and they dropped bits of bacteria on all of the stations.
That was me, Nathan.
Oh, was it you? Oh, there we go. Look. Yeah, you were saying that the bacteria had actually travelled along the train lines.
Yeah, almost in the exact same layout, isn't it?
Yeah, which
proves
is amazing.
It's the most efficient layout possible.
Yeah,
which is
and
testament to their engineers.
It really is. It just shows what years of exposure to this kind of computing power can do. Because, like I say, this was the first, and it was back in 1960. So they've had all that time to sort of perfect it, and constantly any changes that happen to the railway system, they can change instantly on their on their digital version of it.
It's amazing.
So it's pretty cool. And this is back in the 60s. Like, you know, it's not really new stuff. It's just new to us, new to the consumer. Because yeah, technology is evolving. I love this picture on the right. We show it around, you know, friends and colleagues all the time. The fact that all that stuff's in your pocket, and it's true. Yeah, technology is just playing catch up. I mean, I know someone earlier mentioned BBC Micro. I think this is a Raspberry Pi down here. I mean, the computing power just of these things, right, is insane. This itself is able to do some real time computing, which is it's pretty cool. So, where does the metaverse come into this? However you want to coin it, omniverse, metaverse. It's essentially just virtual spaces. Whether you agree with Mr. Zuckerberg or not and his business practices, it's up to you. We'll leave the politics out of it. But the technology itself, it is here. It is coming. Who's going to win? We don't know. But what is it? So yeah, it's a virtual reality space in which users can interact with a computer-generated environment and other users. It sounds like it exists already, right? I mean, we're a VR group. I'm pretty sure we've had many people come on and talk about this kind of thing. So why is it a big deal at the moment? So the metaverse isn't so much a thing. We're not saying, oh, yeah, we're going to create a virtual space to everyone that can hang out in, and that's the metaverse. It's actually a shift of ideology into how we interact with technology. So our go-to at the moment, if we want to watch TikTok, for example, we open up our mobile phones and we scroll down on TikTok. This theory of a metaverse is meant to be the next step of how we're interacting with our social media and videos and messages and games and absolutely everything. It's the theory is that we'll be engulfed by this stuff instead of interacting with these technologies the way we are. I've got another cool little video. I'm a bit worried about time, so I'm going to skip through a good grip of it. I imagine most people have already seen this already. But it's a great little clip of the upcoming Matrix game where we see Keanu Reeves famously played Neo in the Matrix, and he's essentially he's in the metaverse. It sounds crazy, right? It sounds like the Matrix is just around the corner, and we all seen how that film turned out, and I don't think we want to live in that world.
So this isn't actually him, is it? This is a rendered version of him, right?
Yes, it swaps in and out throughout the entire video, and I'll be honest, sometimes it really is hard to tell. It's really impressive. There's another bit here where, yeah, he's talking to us.
So how does this come into the metaverse then? So the environment they've created here is an example of a metaverse. Game, right?
I mean, the Matrix in general, right, is what the proposed metaverse is. It's that we will be living within this virtual space where anything can happen, anything can change, and at the split second, the entire face can change. And when I speak to people about this, and we talk about the Matrix, we still speak about it as though it's science fiction, but it's here. We can do this. I've already showed the example of metahumans, for example.
Yeah. So the whole game has been created in the Unreal Engine, right? And large parts of the new film, which is a first as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as Zuby said there as well, this is using the new Unreal Engine 5's metahuman stuff. It exists. You know, again, we need to stop referring to the Matrix as some kind of science fiction, because it's close. It really is close. I mean, whether you want to say that science fiction has informed or predicted, future technology is up to you. But we've seen examples of this in the past where we've seen we've got driverless cars in the top left. We've got the flip phone from Star Trek. We've got drones in the top right from Terminator. We've got holograms back, from Star Wars. Whether it's informed or predicted, it's here. It's happening. And the Matrix is just another one of them, I think, in my opinion. I just put a slide in here about tech from the games industry before we move on to the next one, because obviously my background is in games, and these are the bits of tech that I've seen come through games separately. So we've seen facial recognition being used in games, in gesture control. Virtual reality is an obvious one. Amazing graphics, smack bang in the middle there. Mobile game, augmented reality. All these things come through the games industry, and that's because we often see the games industry being sort of like a testing zone for this kind of tech.
It's like a bit of a petri dish, isn't it?
It really
works
is.
There, then you're likely to see it roll out into more commonplace use.
It's because it's always profitable. No matter what you put into a big game, it will sell. It will. If it's done right, it will at least break even, and you get to get a genuine public reaction to the kind of technology. What we're actually seeing now is that, I mean, we take Zuckerberg's sort of approach, is that we're seeing a gamification here of that is the metaverse. It's taking all this stuff we've seen in video games, bundling it all together, laying all these bits of real-time computing on top of each other to say, hey guys, in about 5 or 10 years, we're going to have the computing power. All those slides I've just gone through about all those different examples, we'll do it all at once. It's all going to happen at once. We're going to have the power to do that. And every example I've spoke about today, you probably noticed I've talked about, 60 frames a second and how much is happening within a single frame, milliseconds, so much data being rendered within a millisecond. And now we're talking about layering all that on top of each other. High fidelity graphics, mesh deformation, metahuman quality characters, VR being implemented, AR being implemented, videos then being played through that on top of it.
How much do you think COVID is going to really kickstart this? Because that seems to have reignited the conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Around this meta-social stuff around, people would just resort to this.
I just
lazy
thought
journalism,
myself,
or do you think that's actually going
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it's lazy journalism. It's only crossed my mind today when I was actually going back through these slides. And I mean, obviously we'll never know, but I wonder how much, if COVID hadn't happened, if this would have been accelerated the way that it was. This was always going to happen. It was inevitable. The technologies that I've shown today are 5-6 years old anyway, individually. But them being layered together in this way was always going to happen, because that's how technology works. We just layer new things on top of each other as we become able to. But yeah, I do wonder, without COVID, how much it would have accelerated this much. Definitely.
It's sort of gone double speed, hasn't it, I guess?
Yeah, no, definitely. Sophia said some supermarkets using the facial recognition to track customers through stores. Yeah, exactly. And I know it's several different cameras, but they're all linked to one computer is doing that, right? One computer can have 100 cameras connected to it and recognize, several faces on each camera all at once, within a split second. And it's impressive. So the theory is that we're going to take all that games tech, all the gamification of life, and then move it to a work life as well. So the theory is that we'll actually we who knows if BHXR will be hosted in the meta realm a few months or a year from now. We're not far off.
Teasing us now, aren't we? We were talking about this the other week, weren't we, about the possibility of this, and it's testament really that we're even talking about it as a possibility to host an event.
I mean, if we go back, we've got some prime examples of here where it's actually already semi-possible. We've got Engage up here. Another one is Altspace VR, where you can all hang out in VR. I mean, it's very limited, and it can be a bit janky at times. I don't think the processing power is quite there. Diana said, social media, Zoom meetings, we're partly there now. 100%. This is what I mean by that acceleration. And then it's not just the acceleration of technology, but it's the culture acceleration as well. We've all been almost forced to quickly adapt to this style of working. We've gone from an age where we've got some people who basically aren't able to use computers and don't know how to use them, all the way up to people that are, developing really high quality artificial intelligence for things. What a generation of people, and it's being proposed that this is going to happen. This is it. This is over the next 5 years, everyone will be doing this in their workplace. Everyone. I know people that can barely operate a spreadsheet. I mean, that's just the nature of it, right? I mean, and to propose that we're going to accelerate even further, that everyone's going to be doing this is, I mean, it remains to be seen. So, are real-time skills important? I mean, if you've listened to me waffle on for the last sort of 45 minutes, you probably understand that they are at this point. But in terms of the job market, I've got some statistics here that I'll quickly fly through. So demand for 3D graphics and real-time skills is growing 10% faster than the overall job market. And this one was more impressive for me, 50% faster than the average information technology skill. So I know I already touched on the use of spreadsheets and whatnot there. That's sort of your generic IT stuff. But yeah, people want this. This is a change that we're seeing companies make.
Yeah.
So it's
Nathan, we've had a really interesting question in the chat, and it was something I was going to raise. Well, I'm interested in as well, really, which is from Kate, who said the scalability seems to be for large corporations at the moment, and how do you see that SMEs or even individuals can access this type of tech or apply this type of tech?
I think the most impressive thing about this actually is that it's no longer a large corporation thing. I touched on I kind of touched on it back on the face tracking slide. And I mean, we've had a few conversations in chat about the use of Unreal and Unity and whatnot. This is in people's homes. The power to make this kind of stuff is already at your fingertips. The source is from Unreal, Zubi. This is from their website. Sorry, I should have referenced it, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, like the power to make this stuff is already at our fingertips. The learning material is there, provided by the likes of Unreal and Unity. Their engines are there, free for use. The power and the technology is all free. That's it. It's insane. I mean, I don't think we've ever been at a point in history where we've been so enabled to take part in a revolutionary change. I'm going to quickly scan through this because my next point, at that point, links on quite well to something coming up. So yeah, this is kind of job postings per country. Singapore's seen the biggest increase. It's quite interesting. The UK, another large one. And it's not just the increase in jobs, but it's also the worth in those jobs. So we've seen in the UK that salaries that include real-time skills are shot up by 29%. More so in Canada, but that's due to their the way that their companies are taxed. And games-based companies and 3D rendering-based companies are almost tax-free over in Canada, or at least they get taxed very, very little. So that's seen a big boom. So I've got really bad text here. I'm sorry. I'll read them out. It must be my theme that must have messed it up. But essentially, we're looking at Industry 4.0. That's where this all sort of links up to. So when I talk about us being enabled, and it's the first time that I think it's happened ever. We've seen different forms of industry. You can see there we've got steam power and then assembly line, and the industry 3.0 that we've just lived through is automation and computers and electronics, where we've introduced computers into everyday life. Offices and supermarkets, and the medical industries took it on as well. Absolutely everything. But at the start of that wasn't in people's hands, right? Computers were expensive back in the 1960s when that sort of industry was kicking off. It was big industry that sort of led the way, and that's why we've got these tech giants right now, like Apple, Microsoft, because it was expensive. It was real expensive, and because it was new, you have to really have the know-how as well. I think this is the first time we've had an industrial revolution. That's what this is, the real-time revolution, where everybody who can get their hands on a computer, and not even that good of a computer, can learn these skills and can make a start in doing something. So I like I said, I'm going to read this list out of some things that are planned to be incorporated into this Industry 4.0, because I know the text is quite badly. So we've got the Internet of Things, which is the connectivity of devices, 5G linking into that. And then got smart manufacturing and smart factories, which we looked at earlier. Cloud computing, where again, when I talk about not needing a very powerful computer, because all the power needed is done on a computer somewhere else, and you're just streaming that onto your less powerful device. Artificial intelligence, blockchain, digital twins, 3D visualization is the important one that I want to sort of mention as I sort of fly through these last points, because I know we're already over time. I got two quotes from medium.com here. In the age of Industry 4.0, manufacturers need to prepare their entire workforces to harness the power of technology. This is happening. we can't stop it. So it's sort of like an all aboard situation. No matter what level you want to get in on, the ability is there for everybody to onboard. And finally, what part will your real-time skills play? So this group is built up of people that are clearly quite interested in this kind of technology, being part of BHXR. So what part can your skill play? And I actually originally made a whole few more slides here about Industry 4.0 and ended up deleting them because I didn't feel like it was necessary, because the beautiful thing about this is our time. This is one of the first times, I think, in history that we've seen the creatives of the world. That's what this is in terms of 3D visualization. It's normally the artists that are sort of on the bottom rung of the ladder, throughout history, and especially throughout, salary wise. I think the art and art forms are normally pushed down a little bit lower. But this is the beautiful amalgamation of what STEAM actually is. We're talking technology and art, maths and science, engineering, all coming together to create this Industry 4.0 where, you just got to pinch onto sort of one of those letters wherever your skill lies, and you can easily find your way in. Colleges already ask industry what to teach.
So this follows I'm just getting over that call to arms, Nathan. That was a very, very passionate finish.
It was really nice. Yeah, I'm quite passionate about it because myself, I was
couldn't agree more with you, really.
I was more art based, and because I realised that where wages were going and whatnot, I sort of had to force myself into more of a tech role. And I feel like this is finally doing some artists some justice of, starting to see real value in being able to visualize something. And I had a slide back there about transparency. I mean, throughout this entire talk, we spoke about the theme about, relationships between clients and designers, and complete transparency throughout the project, because it's artists that are going to be able to visualize all of these things for everybody along that line of development.
Yeah, some great points there, Nath. I think you're right. I think especially with the STEAM stuff, that's a nice way to finish it. We've got a good question from Patrick that's come in, asking about, do you think there's a massive disruption coming to education, and as a result, will the tech firms be seen as the next gen educators?
I think it's already happened. I mean, it's a bit odd coming from someone that works in university, but I think over the last probably 5 to 10 years, we've already seen tech. But what it used to be was universities used to inform, the future of tech. We've already started to see that reverse, just because of how much money is in these companies.
Yeah, Sonia's made a really good point as well. Is creativity is a skill that every employer wants, so arts have to be at the heart of all of this, which is, I think everyone agrees with that, Sonia.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
We've dropped the feedback form in the chat for one last time. Like I said earlier, that is gold dust to us. So if you could take 2 minutes just to fill that in, get some feedback, help us guide this content, so we're delivering stuff that not only we're passionate about, that you guys find useful and as well. So that'd be fantastic. Thank you all for coming to the first event of the year, and I think we'd like to see you at the all the others we have planned in 2022 as well, Nathan.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, thanks for all for coming, and we'll send out details of the next event very soon, and hopefully see you all again at the next session. Thanks everyone.